All right, and welcome everyone back to another episode of the Wilkes Barre Connect Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Kimbrough, and today we are honored to be here with Mx Jake Kelley. Hello, Jake. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to hear your voice and see your face and have this conversation once again.
Which one day we won't have to have it, luckily. So Jake Kelley comes to us from the website's Juicy by Jake, but the organization is Mx Kelley Queer Education LLC, correct?
Yes.
And the purpose of the organization, the way you put it together, is the idea that you want to do training and consulting from a very high academic level, looking at human sexuality and queer education and bringing inclusivity into the workplace. And what I want to talk with you today is sort of that notion of identities and inclusivity in the workplace, and why we need to make sure that businesses and organizations, before they go out and start recruiting, and with June coming up and putting rainbows and everything, how do we make the workplace much more it's gonna be one of those episodes. How do we make the workplace more inclusive beforehand, but also the why? And so when we're talking about identity, what do you mean by identity? Like, is it just the notion of, well, I'm heterosexual and you're not, so that's all I need to understand? Or is it a bigger issue than this?
Yeah, so I think identity becomes one of those words we get trapped in, of just thinking of it's so surface level, and not actually understanding what we mean when we say I identify, and or that we as individuals identify in some way, because it's not just here's a name, here's a term, it's a label. There's so much more meaning behind our identities, because we are literally going through the world with our own experiences because of our sexual orientations, our gender identities, even our race, our age, and disability. So when we talk about identities, we also need to acknowledge the historical understanding of how these people in these communities have been affected by the history within their culture, within their work, within their families. We have to acknowledge on what are they going through, what are they processing. Like, there are actual information out there to know, like, when people are coming out, that's a process. When people are transitioning, that's a process. When people are dealing with legality issues because, we have anti-LGBTQ laws being represented, that's a process. And all of these things still need to be addressed when we say, this is how I identify. And people are like, and so what? I don't care. Or, and good for you, like there's that nonchalantness now that people are like, I don't care, just be who you want. But I'm like, okay, I need you to also recognize then when you come to me to ask me a question, you're putting that emotional and mental labor on me when I'm not being paid for it, or when I'm not going out there. And then there's like, I feel like this whole episode is just going to be me ended up talking about this. But yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
To get back to your question though, identities are a surface understanding of words. They are not the definition to the meanings.
Okay. Explain it a little more.
So how I like to understand that is, like, with the surface level of the words is how we identify, right? And so I'm a non-binary person. The only thing that should tell you is maybe my gender identity or some aspects of knowing what I might experience in the world. But it doesn't give you the clear understanding until you start to know my story and start to know who I am and what I've gone through. Like, it's so interconnected, because then that I always give this example too. Like, my non-binary identity matches with my Japanese side, and like there's intertwined sections there that we now have to talk about that are separate in, like, how I present or why I don't do certain things, even though it might be assumed, or we tokenize why I do the things I do. And I'm like, actually, that's more of my cultural side, not my gender side. And we don't allow to have those conversations. And so that's why I was like, the definition of my identity is much more than just the word. Like, I'm just giving you a word. So you subconsciously, as humans, we like to put things in boxes. And so that's what I'm doing. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm identifying. Great. But then when we think about safety, right? What does my psychological safety means? And that's going to sound something like, oh, hi, everyone. And saying, hi, men and women, or the boys to this side, the girls to this side. I'm like, well, where do I go? Like, I can
that's where it is.
Right. And then we think about physical safety. And I'm like, actually, I prefer, being in like a space I know that queer people can exist. Why I lean to organizations like, yeah, you do have a pride flag, which kind of makes me feel more comfortable, but I'm also going to question what behaviors come out of that. And so, or even like cyber safety is like another thing that I've been talking about lately, of like how do organizations mitigate conversations and comments in their own social media posts, and how are they dealing with those kind of things? Because if I see someone just leaving these negative posts up, I'm like, ooh, I'm good. Like, I don't need this. You clearly are not addressing this or taking on the responsibility of what you're doing, so I don't want to be a part of it.
And it sounds a lot like it's and I see what you're saying, the separation of here's the label because your brain needs one, right?
Yes.
Where human beings, our bias works in a way in which if I can't clearly put you in a box, you're a threat almost, right? And so that the label of non-binary or you're this or you're that, or even I'm African American or Black, which is a whole rabbit hole that people still don't understand that there's a difference between those two words, right? Like here's something that's easy for you to understand, but you're not actually getting to know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's an actual process. Like there's a level of humanity that goes beyond that label of if I'm an organization and I want to be inclusive, I can't stop at, all right, my form has all the correct labels now. I've done the work. You can check the box and I'm done. It has to go beyond that when we're talking about being inclusive. And so in spitballing, not even thinking of specific organizations, what are some of the practices that as an organization, again, before I start saying that we're inclusive, before I start, and we'll talk about safe spaces not being safe, but before I put that sticker on the window or those things, what should I at least looked into before I do that so that when that social media post goes up and I'm applying and someone Googles my company and it's like, oh, so you have the flag and you've got the sticker, but you allow people in your comment section to use these words and talk this way. Like, what's the work or things that I should at least have on my radar?
So one of the things is understanding the mission, vision, and values of the organization. So it's the number one thing I ask people, like, what are you saying? Are you intentionally choosing I don't say the right words, but are you intentionally choosing words? Are you leaving your mission, vision, values so open and vague? And then the reason why we have mission, vision, and values is because I always tell people you have your vision of what you want your organization to be. You have your mission to what you're trying to say. And then the values is the number one thing where we get to use the language to describe what we are meaning in our mission and vision. And so I think a lot of the times I see a lot of vagueness, and it's not like there's no robustness to it. It's like it's not intentional. It's just like, yeah, we're all welcome here. What does that mean? Like, can you name that? Like, I have to tell people, can you name it to me? And like, I don't know, what would you tell me? And I'm like, I didn't write it. Like, I'm not part of this organization. But as I'm reading this, I'm like, I need more clarity. Or like, we're here to educate everyone. What kind of education? Like, what's that? Like, you're here to, you say, like, it's in one of your 3 values of educating. So what are you trying to, who are you educating? What are you educating? Where are you educating? Why are you educating? Like,
right.
These are all like questions I feel like just needs help, thought-provokingness of like expanding upon these ideas to create clarity. And the other thing is that's where we get into authenticity. And so this, when I think of one of the things I look for is how authentic is your messaging? Because when I say we, I'm speaking more towards the community. We can see when it's performative. We can see when there's performative action, and the opposite of authenticity is, for me, performative action, because it means it's fake, it's not real. It's like you're here because someone told you to be here. I appreciate that you should be here, but if you don't truly value being here, then don't show up. That's my biggest thing. I was like, I do not need you to show up to a party when I could have invited a different guest who would have been here and loved to be here and been valued to be here. And so that's kind of where, and they go, how do we look at authenticity, or how I examine it? I examine it through questioning what their internal policies look like. I question it into, do you have policies of, so we'll say if someone is transitioning in your organization, do you have a policy that helps understand what that could look like if someone is in your space going through a name change, going through some legal changes, going through even just a dress code changing, right? Like, where is that conversation happening and who's it happening with? I also look at
who's it happening with?
Who's it happening with? If I'm sitting at the front desk with you and nothing's happening, you're just venting to me, and I'm over here like, yes, slay. But are we talking to like the CEOs and the EFOs and the HR who have the power to implement these rules and regulations and change the workplace culture? Like, that's another understanding. So workplace culture is another way to define authenticity. Because I tell you, if a workplace says, we're family here, leave. Just leave. Walk out. It should not be your family.
Why, Jake?
Because
Why?
Because if an organization really means they want to have family, it means they have to actually be okay with that fighting, be okay with that discomfort, be okay with that negative internally to help them grow. And actually, when we have those conversations, we're actually listening, engaging, and The other part that we can't be a family is because we're literally not. Like, we're here to get paid
Right.
to be here. I am not here just to want to be here. And that
Exactly.
we also has to also exist. Like, nope, I'm just paid to be here. Like, I'm here for a paycheck. I'm here for stability. Right. I'm here to grow my career or my experiences or accolades or achievements, whatever it is. But when I'm gone, I'm gone. Like, and
if I've clocked out, I've clocked
right.
out.
And at that point, call it a friendship.
Right.
Call it a friendship. Do not call it a family.
I love it. I love it. So it sounds like what you're saying is that a lot of where the level of inclusivity needs to start is that it's not one of those, and I think we hear this often, like, oh, well, we've put in these ERG groups and we're listening to our employees and we're waiting on them to tell us what they need. And it sounds like, no. You need to figure out as the C-suite who you want to be first. And then roll that out. As it sounds like this needs to be something that happens internally, but at the top, not specifically let the folks that are on the lower levels of the organization be the ones to do the emotional labor and lead all of this.
Yes. And I know we've talked about this story before, but knowing there are going to be other listeners, I'm going to share this story again. And I was at a corporation and their ERG group leader reached out to me and be like, we really want you to come in training. We loved your work. Can you come down to Virginia? All these other things. It was great. And I said, absolutely. We took a phone call. I wrote down exactly what kind of training they want, what their speaking kind of engagement, what they want, what their objectives they wanted. And then even leaning into, like, how can I connect this to your own mission, vision, values of the organization? And it was a great conversation with follow-up questions of, like, what have they gone through, what experiences? Because it's the ERG group for LGBT individuals. So they have people who have testimonies, who have those work experiences. And so really great conversation. Then we had a second conversation just for more logisticals, business talk, business plan, models, payment, all of the boring stuff. And then they were like, we need to talk to our VP of HR. I said, oh, okay. Why are they not on this call? And they're like, oh, he's not on this call because he just couldn't make it. But also we are sending over all the proposals and stuff that you've written to him and see what he says. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So are we just doing a follow-up then from what I already sent? Or he's like, he just wants to meet you. Cool. So I was in Paris at the time. This was this March, and I was on my vacation. And I even told them before I went on vacation was like, I will not be able to interact that much, and I'm trying to like take all of my work stuff off. So they contacted me like they rushed it. They were like, we really like this conversation. I said, you know what? It has to be at like this time on this date. That's the only time I have for you because I'm literally on a plane.
Right.
Like I'm traveling. So
yeah, we
get there. I pull it up, and the VP and the head of their DEI department are sitting there. The people of the ERG comes greets me in, and I get the questions I got asked were so wild. It was like I had to prove why I was a good educator. I had to prove my background and credentials. I had to prove myself at a level that I'm just sitting here like, why is this happening? Like, I just had 2 full conversations with your ERG group who literally I matched everything they want to. You literally can read it in the proposal that I did, and they absolutely ate it up. And sorry, they really liked it. They really liked it. They ended up. And, I got turned down. I literally got turned down. I waited a week after that call and messaged them, and they ghosted me. And then I reached out to the person of the head of the ER, and they just said, I can't give you a full answer, but they had decided to not move forward. And then that was the end of the call. And I just sat there. I was like, so I literally messaged back. I'm like, thank you for all your time and energy. I worked on everything you did within a month, including my vacation time. And so I think this speaks loudly on how, even though you have an ERG group in your organization, how your organization sees LGBTQ individuals, and left it at that and said, if you want to move forward and growing, you contact me. But other than that, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
never heard back from them.
Nope. Because the next conversation, if they ever reach out to me, is going to be a whole different one. Be a whole different one.
Yeah.
A whole different conversation. I mean, I'm upping my price, and it's gonna go. I'll be like, we doing a hot movie because what I just learned is that the people who make the decisions don't see the importance, don't see the value, and don't see like that. It literally spoke volumes to be like, ooh, I hope I don't see a flag on any of your merch. I'm gonna call that out right there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting that for the organization, they're outside of DEI just enough that the ERG group is a Band-Aid to them.
Mm-hmm.
We've started an ERG group. We've put a flag on this. There's more time off in June. We're sponsoring XYZ. We haven't changed our mentality. It's what you said. Someone told me I need to do these things to be a good business. So that's why I'm doing them, but I don't want to go beyond that. Anything more than that is actual change. And that's, no. I'm just here for this.
Mm-hmm.
How do we attack that? How do we attack? Because that's the problem. Because
Get rid of them.
all the work.
Get rid of whoever the leaders are. Get rid of them. Fire them.
I agree with you, but
I know that's not the right answer in the sense of like realism. But if I had to give like your best solution is to just get rid of them and start over fresh and start with somebody new. But if we're looking at a cultural change shift, we have to make it personable. This is actually the real answer, sort of say. No, we have to make it personal. People need a reason to connect, and I think it's within the questions they have. Because even in that conversation, the questions I was being asked, I was like, these are not the right questions to ask. Like, these are not the questions you need to be asking right now. The questions you need to be asking is, bringing you in, how does that bring value or increase our value to what we are already doing? Because then I could easily sit there and go, well, from what I've already heard, this is what you're doing. And the value that I have is this is what could help change or create change. And then that's when we get into your employees getting tangible, basic LGBTQA information. So your frontline staff who are running and operating your stores, not at a corporate level, but the frontline people are understanding how to respect identities, respect authenticity, respect not just for their coworkers, but for the people who are literally your consumers.
Right.
Then we have our internal corporate understanding of our workplace culture, of the people who don't are front facing with customers, who understand organizational policy and standards and structures. And then you have your CEOs and of how they can be better leaders. Like I literally, if they just asked that question, I could have easily broke it down for them. They did it. They were so obsessed with, can I prove myself?
Right. Right. And it's interesting because I would think that if the topic was different, you don't get that sort of beratement. You don't get those questions. But when we're talking in the DEI space and we're talking about marginalized groups and underrepresented groups, this notion that, oh, well, you've got to be twice as good as any other speaker or any other presenter goes back to the harm that's done to these groups. Because we've literally put positions and class systems in place where, as a Black man, I have to do twice as much work to be seen as a white person in the workplace. And so when I come to speak, I also have to prove myself twice as much. When quite literally, I'm the group. If for no other reason and no education, I know what you did to me. That's why you should have me here, And so that idea of it has to be this internal push and want. How do we then, looking at the idea of performative actions, and again, with June right around the corner, we're going to see all these rainbows and all these things everywhere. Is that not enough? Is it not enough to say, hey, we know there's a problem. Here's for the next 30 days, we're going to put this flag out here. At least we've acknowledged it, right? Is that not enough? Why and why is acknowledging there's a problem not enough?
So I would say it's a yes and no, and I'll tell you why yes. So there's a part of me that agrees with that rainbow effect, rainbow washing. That's the term, rainbow washing, right? Part of me agrees with it and this is the only side I ever agree on with it, is there is a level of visibility that it shows for the world, right? For the world that we exist in some way, which is part of the reason why the rainbow flag was originally just intended to show the unity within one community. And so that is the only place, knowing where the pride flag stems from and why it's being used. And that is where I'll get. Other than that, if it's not in that 1%, no. It is problematic. It is problematic because it doesn't speak to action. Right? It doesn't speak to the actual action of what needs to happen. What the action needs to happen is both in a reflective self and in the understanding of creation of environment. And so I'll start with reflection. Like every time I do a training, everyone's like, I didn't expect this to be so reflective. Well, yeah, you literally have to reflect on your own microaggressions, your own biases to people. You even have to reflect on your own sexuality and gender identity so you can understand the compassion and empathy, why it was so easy, or maybe even you had some confusion in what we're talking about. And then I help them see how the world just already caters to people. And that's an example of when someone looks at you, do they know your pronouns right away? I was like, oh yeah, my pronouns are she, her, right? Why do you think they know that, right? Why do you think it's so easy? Why do you think you're so comfortable with that? Like, there's a cis normativity to it. Or then I go, and then I ask people, I'm like, are you able to just talk about, like, your marriages or your relationships. Did anyone get married, right? And someone's like, oh yeah, I just got married, and we had a full conversation about it in this meeting. And I'm like, was your marriage heterosexual? Yeah. I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, it's just the commonality to that is self-reflective, and I want people to reflect on, like, even though it's easy for you, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I need to say it's not easy for everyone, and you have to ask yourself why.
Right.
So that's the one piece. That's the piece that we don't always see. That's the intra perspective piece. That's the piece that's where we really hope the work is being done. Because then it can lead then to that actionable piece and how we changing environment and how we are creating environmental understandings. And I have learned in this field, people just want a script that says, I want to know the right words and what to say at what time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I sit there and go, I can't give that to you. As best as I wish I could give that to you, I can't give that to you. Nobody can give that to you. You have to take responsibility in knowing that yourself and practicing it. And an example, I was in a medical field place. I don't want to name it, so we'll just go. We were in a medical institute, and I was asked by professions of, like, how do we help clients who are LGBT? And I said, are you asking, like, medical care? Because that is actual understanding for them. Like, you know, if someone who is looking through hormone therapy or other type of surgery placements, like, that's real. Like, that is a medical thing.
A real question.
We need training on that. We need, like, there's stuff there. But then they were like, no. Like, how do we address them? And I go, how would you address not a normal person? I just say normal person, a non-queer person, a non-client that's related to this. And they're like, oh, hi, my name is this. Okay, great. I'm just asking you, why don't you just start with that? Why don't you just start with that? Like, that sounds like a great start to begin with. And then I was like, and then what they ended up finding out in these sessions was they were not opening enough to clients, and they were not paying attention to what they had to say or hear. And because the environment they were doing, everyone thinks environment is about the physical space. It is in certain settings, but it's also about, like, what we say is what's creating the environment. And an example of that is when individuals, like, I can look at you, Dan, and go, oh my God, Dan, how was your day? Tell me more. Wow. I really like how you put that together. So you're saying, you know, you had a really exciting day, but this one thing was bothering you. Is that something you want to talk about now? And so, yes, we're not having a full conversation about all the language I just used helped hopefully create an environment that showed empathy, that it showed reflective statements, that showed understanding, it showed I cared and had compassion. And I'm like, people like, that's all. Don't want to cut off. You're good.
No. But that's what's amazing is that that's just a normal conversation. Like, it's not how do I interact with the LGBTQIA plus community. It's how do I interact with people.
Wild.
Like, if you're not doing those things in your everyday interactions as that first triage person in the hospital to create a safe environment for everyone, you shouldn't be there in general. Not because you can't work with a queer identity group. It's because you can't work with people.
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is just be better, then be better.
Right. And the other thing is, then yesterday I did a training for university's program, one of their international programs. And someone goes, you can't stop bullying. Bullying is just going to happen. And I said, you're not wrong. But then how do you handle that, or how can you prevent it? They go, well, I just said you can't prevent it. I was like, you're telling me there's nothing in this world that would help limit how much bullying could happen. Nothing. That's like, it was a very interesting, provoking thought. He's like, and then the gentleman that spoke was like, no, we have policies, we have all these measures. And I go, oh, measures. You talked about measures. Let's talk about that. And he was like, I don't know if I used the right word because now I put him on the spot. And I go, well, a measure of bullying could be how often does it happen? How frequently does it happen? To who is it happening? You can find all that data out by using an equity data form to see if someone has psychological safety issues or discriminatory actions that were put against them. So you literally can measure how much negativity or hate's happening in a thing by just asking questions and getting the data. That's
amazing.
Right, and then you just take that and move forward. So you're the one that's like, you had these measures, but now you're telling me you don't have measures here. You just have a policy. So we can't actually address we can't address any barriers because we don't know them.
And I think that's that's that weird amazingness as well as the idea of doing some sort of psychological safety survey, where, because so many companies say, well, our customers, our employees, or our constituents don't complain, so there must not be a problem. And it's one of those weird things. I'm like, right, who are they supposed to complain to? What forms do you have? What are the questions that you're asking? Like, is it an actual open and safe environment for people to have a complaint and push back? And realistically, have you, outside of saying, if you have any questions, comments, or complaints, tell me, done anything more than that? So no, they're not going to tell you. Plus, they're worried about their job.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a safe environment to be able to even do that in. And that's something else I want to talk about is the notion of safe spaces. And I know that in this notion of with, again, Pride Month coming up, and I know I'm about to completely open a can of worms, but with Pride coming up and we're going to see these performative actions, what is the one caveat that we're always missing, and I already know the answer, to this idea of slapping up that safe space sticker and saying that this is a safe space. I've done the training and we know the words and we respect you, and our bathroom has an alien on it because we're so open to everything. Why is this not the answer, and why is it not a safe space?
So, I personally can't stand when someone says we're a safe space. I have so many answers to this. I'll just put it this way. One thing I want to tell people is, how do you know what safety looks like for me, or what it is, or what it does? How can you ensure safety? And it's a double-edged sword, because we want to do our best. We want to say we are doing our absolute best, and we can't 100% guarantee it. But for me, I need someone to acknowledge that it's not 100% safe. I need to know that, like, say if we're at an organization, say it's a restaurant. We'll use a restaurant as an example. And a restaurant wants to do a Pride type of event and host a Pride event. And they're like, yeah, we're a safe space. And I'm saying, you have the ability to control anyone that walks through that door. Is that what you're saying? You have control of whoever walks out there is going to say something or not harm any of us, because we know historically there are safe spaces, or centered spaces is what I'll call them, for LGBT individuals where the still harm was done to them.
Yeah.
And so when I think of safe spaces, I go, why can't you just say it's a welcoming space? Why are we using the word safety? Because the other part there is, there's the safety isn't always in that physical space. It's also in that, like, we went back to that cyberspace. It's also into that social space, right? People also don't recognize social understanding of safety, because I'm like, well, why is this, like, no offense to faith groups, I have nothing wrong with it, but there are some faith groups and organizations in church who have a bad reputation history for LGBTQ individuals, and now we're inviting them, and we're just like, well, we're trying to build bridges. Well, ain't nobody tell me that we try to build bridges right now. I'm just trying to have a drink, a meal, and have a good time with my friends. I ain't here having, like, shaking hands and, going through all of that right now. Like, if we wanted that space, we should have built that space somewhere else, not in these moments where we're calling these organizations safe spaces. And then all of those, like you mentioned, they have bathroom sign, they have flag up there. I think it's a good start, and I think it's a little bit above a good start. It's a basic level. It's that intermediate level that I would think about. How are they confronting the people in the restaurant who might have what we call an ignorant mindset? And I've seen this happen where I've sat at a bar, and the bartender is actually a good friend of mine. He's gay. And at the end of the bar, someone said something very derogatory, like, oh, don't hit on me. And I'm just sitting here like, I'm literally sitting here like, this bartender did not hit on this man. And I just looked over and I go, you're having a beer? And he just stops and goes, what? Oh, no, if we're going to cause a scene that nothing happened, I'm going to complain that you're having a beer right now at a place that you chose to come, and this was your bartender and you got to sit with. And the manager comes over and goes, is there a problem? And, like, I was with my two friends, and we said, yeah, the man at the bar is bothering us. And we ended up essentially getting this man kicked out, in the sense, because we all said we felt unsafe. Now, would some people say my behavior in that moment was problematic? Probably, because I should have used more of the other communication dialogues that I had, but I just was not having it in that day. And I knew that bartender did not need that kind of hate put on him when he did absolutely nothing but serve this person, just like he served the rest of us, a drink.
Right.
And so for me, I was like, this is where my advocate side comes out of. I have zero tolerance for this, not my educational side of let's try to understand. I was like, I don't need to understand this moment right now. I'll accept it, but I'm not understanding it. And an example like that is when the manager came over, that manager actually took responsibility and accountability, saying, oh, you know what? It's not just my employees we need to think about. It's also the attendees we're thinking about, because his employee needed the same respect that our customers should have been given to. And so he was actually asked to leave. The guy ended up just getting mad. It was actually a whole scene. He ended up getting mad.
Yeah.
It got a little bit worse. And then, but that's, to me, the next level. How can you mitigate behavior and actually hold those spaces in the conversation? Because we actually asked the man to apologize, and he didn't want to. He's like, I ain't apologizing. I'm like, okay, then we're good.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing is that, because we put the sticker on the door, or we do the training, and I'm like, see, no, this is a safe space. I'm a safe person, but we don't talk about what that means at that next level. So what happens when someone walks in the door? What happens when someone's being offensive and it's not in the way that you were expecting and something needs to be done? What are then your measures? What are the policies? Who do I talk to have that situation become safer because it's not in that small moment? And so I think that's something that we don't think about. And I think about places that are literally, you said it's queer centered, and I love that rephrasing of it, because there are bars and clubs and places that are very much queer centered, but unfortunately that also puts a target on them. So while inside that space it may be safe to be who you are, by it existing, it's not a safe space. The fact that it has to exist separate from other bars and other entities and other places of business means that no, it's not safe. It may be queer centered, it may be queer welcoming, but it's not a safe space, because you can't guarantee that everyone that may interact with this organization or these individuals has that exact same mindset.
And I think it brings up a good point too, is because I believe in queer centering spaces if it's for the right reasons. Like, there are campgrounds that are out in Pennsylvania, and I think that's important because when we think about our dating culture, our relationship culture, our just how we interact with each other, when I say we, I mean me and a lot of my friends, we love hanging out with each other. It's a whole different atmosphere, right? Like we're being our most authentic because we're using our language. We don't have to code switch in the sense of like pretending all these things. We're literally just sitting here like, how you doing, girl? And like, we're not afraid to change that language.
To be you, to be authentic.
Right. The organicness is there. And so like those walls we're putting up are like not there other than like, cattiness. And so, but that's okay. And I think, though, when organizations who are not queer-centered, I always go, I don't think you need to have a queer-centered space, but I also need you to understand, when you say the term safe space, I need to believe it. When you say it with your full chest, I need to believe it. I need to know that I'm going to walk in, and I need to know that I don't have to have my walls up.
Yes. That's the answer. And I love that, because that leads me to the last question that I have for you, is that when we think about, and I keep talking about, June coming up and this notion of performative actions, one of the questions that I always get, and I have my sort of set of answers, but I want to hear from you as well, is, all right, so let's say we're an organization that's actually doing the work. We've started at the top. We are a place that when we say with our full chest that we are inclusive, we mean it, and that we've done the work, and it's not just the sign on the bathroom. It's understanding why we need the bathroom spaces and understanding in our employees, and we are actually doing the work. How do we let people know we are and not fall into you're just being performative? Because if I'm really doing the internal work, most people on the outside aren't going to see it. It's not until you walk in and, like you said, I feel safe. I don't have to put up walls. I feel authentic. I can't invite the whole world in. How do I let people know, no, we are actually doing the work. We're not just Nabisco or whoever, and here's your rainbow Oreo. I'll probably get in trouble for that, but continue.
Stop, I'm here for it. I just hope now that they sponsor, so that way there you go. Sponsor us and be forgiven. So I think that's a really good question, because sometimes we can't always prove to people that we did the work until they have that one foot in the door. But I don't want to lead on that foot, because that makes it sound defeated. I want to have the honest understanding of, like, so then what does your marketing look like? Like, did you start a new campaign? Did you acknowledge, like, your historical understanding and where you grew from? Can you actually point out the measures that have changed to show the data, the informative and equitable data that is out there in your organization? Go, actually, we did see an increase because we changed this policy. And that increase can look like representations of who are hired, or less retention, or you see more people in your organization actually coming out in transition.
Mm-hmm.
Because now that like when people start coming out in an organization, that's a good sign to know like they feel comfortable.
Right.
And so all of those are what you can have a conversation with, and anyone part of that organization can sit there and go, this is how we are showing it, because it's there. Like if they're doing the back work, the action will come.
Right.
And you shouldn't have to be like, we're proving it. And I say that because I've sat in organizations, and in one organization particularly, I was actually helping them understand their conference design and format, and everyone kept saying, we're very inclusive here. If you have to say it, I'm going to let you know it doesn't exist. If you have to remind me every 5 minutes that you're inclusive, it does not exist. If I can't just walk in here knowing I can be myself, it does not exist. Like, like I sit here, and so when to answer your question, like those measurements, those objectives, thinking of it in an objective way is a great tool and method, and those are the strategies. Objectiveness is in measurements, in designs. It is in campaigns, and what are they called? Initiatives, right? Strategies. It's in how you are writing your language. We can see it, we can read it, we can visualize it. It's tangible. It's not just a one-liner that's so vague. You go, yeah, I don't get it. You have goals. You have goals that show we did these goals, we completed these goals. Here's how we completed it. We'll revisit them if we have to come back to them, but we're going to move on. Like, that's strategy, that's structure, that's what's supposed to be there. And I don't know. I always say how like if anyone in the world had to come up to me and go, we're friendly, right? Like we're inclusive. You're welcome here. And if I walk in there, I should just feel it. Yeah. I should just feel it. I should just it shouldn't have to be a made up story or belief to the fact that everyone's just like, oh, you didn't know? Yeah, it's there. And everyone has to talk about it. It's like, no, I should just be able to walk in and it should be there. I also say acknowledging the history is also a big one. Like I love organizations that are not afraid to be like, you know what, we did mess up. This was a problem that never got addressed.
Yeah. And I love that as well. The notion of saying, no, we come from a bad place. We open it. Here's the truth. We'll talk about it all you want, but that's our past. And I think that if you can stand on and mean that that's our past and show, like you said, through your strategies, the objectives, the measures, there are people coming out, there are people who are celebrating and doing things organically already within your organization. You shouldn't have to preach. It's like, here's our white paper. Here's last year's annual report. It's boring. It's not flashy, but the answer to your question is, here's the annual report. Like, here are the actual numbers. It's not going to be a social media post or a party that we're going to throw where every time someone comes out of the organization is, hey, we don't need to do that because it's just who we are. And I think that that's something, you imagine it's like ringing the bell like on the stock exchange every time someone comes out. But I think it's one of those things that
I would be eating it up. I would be like, I know that's right.
Jake's at the bell actually. Waiting.
I'm always like, I'm with glitter every single time. Like, you better work.
Our proof is the glitter budget that Jake has. That's how you know our organization is doing better. We have a glitter budget for Jake. But I think that's it. I think it's one of those that, like, you're right. If someone just walks in and you see it, you feel it, it's written on the walls, not literally, but like it's just the organization. And it's not, oh, look, we have a break room with a pool table and the family environment where everyone, everyone's favorite cereal is here or something like that. Like it's the literal environment and the spaces and how authentic people can feel. And I think that that's a message that gets lost, is that your performative action of telling people, like you said, if you have to tell me that this is safe, it's not safe. Like when people say, oh, I love Black people. No, you don't. No, you don't.
What do you love about them?
And should I be worried?
Yeah.
That like your initial response was, I love Black people? Now I'm worried about all the things now, And so, but I think that's a great place to leave it, though, is that idea of like, if I have to tell you that I respect you, it's already too late.
Yeah.
Because if you're questioning it, clearly I don't respect you.
I also that actually leads me to the thought of like, we have to understand we're all human, and that's not to say that you can't make mistakes, but it's if we need to have a conversation, then we have to have the conversation. That having the conversation isn't the negative point. It's not the downpoint point. The downpoint point is when I'm avoiding everything. I'm leaving. You have high retentions. You're getting a bad review. you like, those are the bad signs. Me sitting here saying,
Yeah.
so I'm questioning your actions in this meeting. And the meeting was just this tangent about one thing, which could have been like, I don't know, what did I used to do? Training design, right? Educational training design. And we got off on like onboarding, we'll say. And then during onboarding, all we did was talk about what new hires and stuff have to go to. And then, someone brings up a story that is unrelatable and then starts questioning like the new queer person that just got hired, right? And there's like, that's the example. Right. Like, you can use any other examples of like the other 42 people that just got hired, but okay.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And I was talking about this training design, but I guess we'll go over here. And so like, I'm a person that will be like, so why are we like, I appreciate we're taking all this time to do one thing, but now I have more concern on why we are now questioning and targeting and isolating this problem. And so that's where we have an open and honest conversation of maybe we should have made like, what are they called? Meeting rules and agendas where it says during the meeting, this is what we're following. Does our team agree on that? That's creating a level of what we call psychological and social safety, because we are creating the script of how we are running this specific time in meeting. And I don't think people understand that level of power. And I call it power because the one who's creating it is going to be that manager or that supervisor. But they shouldn't be doing it as like a dictatorship of like, you have to follow these rules. It's right. All right, we're all going to be sitting down during each meeting. We go over these rules. And in these rules are like, remember that we are going to have good intentions, even though I hate good intention rules. I hate good intention rules so bad because people are like, yeah, I don't believe they have good intentions, but we can lie about it. But maybe when I think of good intentions of mindfulness of asking questions, right? Like, how are we asking questions? Like, that is to me the good intention of asking related to curiosity, because I do want to believe people just have curiosity. They just don't know how to ask it. So that's where I'll be like, that's where it's the facilitator should be like, did you mean to ask it? Like, is this what you mean to ask, or is this really what you're asking? Yeah. That's where you get good facilitation. But in those meeting roles, like, how are you running it? Do we have consent throughout the whole thing? Like, wait, can we ask about this? Do we have proper time management? And proper time management isn't being on time. It's about just making sure we have enough time to expand if we need to. And then if we just put something like that in place, we just saved us from having to get into this other level of conversation that we ended up finding out someone had an issue with the new gay hire.
Right. No, and I think, and I think it's amazing because at that level, that doesn't even feel like it's a DEI tactic or it's creating a safe space. It's how do we effectively run a meeting? It goes back to how do we effectively communicate? It feels like if we are just better individuals, be better in your role and make sure that inclusion and the idea that you really are trying to do best for everyone in the workplace, if that is the core of where we sit, you can be better. You shouldn't have to point out, oh, I'm being better for this group or I'm being better for this. No, just be better.
And the one tactic to even add, if we just stick with meetings, was a great tactic I learned from someone. Intentionally give the group something to read. And the thing that the reading can relate to DEI then, right? We can read about any form of population, any article come out, and the first 5 minutes is just debriefing of how did we feel about when we read this article. And I thought that was such an interesting way to start meetings when I experienced it, because I was just like, like we were able to have an open dialogue about something that then how it connects to our entire meeting, right? And so the article I think they gave the example to was overseeing economics, but from people of color standards, and then like they broke it down into Hispanic, Black, African American, Asian, and I think Middle Eastern. And when I saw it, I was like, well, how does that relate to us? And then like that's when we brought up in the meeting, they brought up in the meeting like the conversations around like, so what populations are we not serving that was in this thing? And like that's how they reconnected it. And it was just...
Oh, that's brilliant.
So brilliant. I know. I was like, because the first conversation was just like, how did we feel about this? Let's read about it. And, people like, oh, I didn't know this was happening in like the Middle East. I didn't know these people's perspectives. And then it's like, we joined it back to the meeting. I thought that was so brilliant to bring educational DEI into a place and then bring it back to your workplace.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think that's a great tactic to think about, because that way you're, and also politics don't matter, the world doesn't matter, all the things people say they don't matter to them. And here's the way you do it in a way that doesn't feel woke or that you're forcing it. You're saying, no, it does matter, because literally in our meeting, we're going to now reflect this whatever bigger issue to what we do day to day. And so I really do. That's a great takeaway for people, that like literally just have a common reading before a meeting, and you can incorporate more DEI and understanding. And again, the little things that you can do to create a more, not safe, but inclusive and welcoming environment for those that are around us. So, Jake, we could talk for hours. We've done it before, so I'm going to go ahead and stop us here. Thank you, though, Jake Kelley. Visit Juicy by Jake, Juicy with Jake.
You're getting Juicy with
Juicy.
Jake.
Yes. Get juicywithjake.com. Check out juicywithjake.com. And read through, learn more about Jake and the services that they offer. And if you have questions, reach out. Pay when you reach out. But also, if you need someone to come in and speak, look, I'm all about people getting paid for what we do. But if you need someone to come and speak or train within your organization, please reach out to Jake. I think that there's a lot of spaces, specifically here in NEPA, but for anyone listening, that we want to create these environments, and we're doing it, but we don't have the right education, or we're not talking to the right people to make sure that we're doing it in a way that will actually net the results that we want. So, juicywithjake.com, reach out, and hire this person, please, because they need the money and you need the help. And that's it for this episode of Wilkes Barre Connect Podcast. Thank you all for listening.